Thank you for spending so much time with me. What's next for you?
What's next for me, my friend, is to prepare myself to enter into the life beyond this one, to enter into the next phase of life. In a word, I started to think. Before that age, I had various interests and passed through various phases, of course, but thinking, in the true sense of the word, started, I would say, almost abruptly at the age of 14. I remember it was quite exasperating for my mother because very often I would be in my room and she would call me to dinner, and I said, I can't come now, I am thinking.
Wolfgang Smith was born in 1930 in Vienna. I think it was a bit of a tough start for him. From what I understand, he escaped the Nazis and a Russian invasion, and eventually he got to the US on a merchant vessel. And at the early age of 15, this guy gets into Cornell, and he does a triple major, philosophy, physics, and mathematics, which is really unheard of from what I understand. At a young age, he already was exposed to Whitehead's work, and he was really captivated by it. It really set him thinking, and it was an indication for him that it was something very important that he was reading, and he was really trying to understand the universe. In applying to Cornell, he wrote down in his application that he thought that physics contained the keys to the universe. That was his motivation to get started, let's say. So he gets introduced to universities, and after 3 years he graduates and he gets offered a fellowship in philosophy at Cornell.
So after 3 years, he's 18 years old.
Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah.
Like this story, I heard it for the first time and I was like, who is this guy? Why have I never heard of him? And thank you for whoever got him into the internet, because it's just amazing. Anyway, he gets this fellowship offered to him, and 3 weeks in, he's extremely disappointed.
Because to me, philosophy was philosophia. And these people, were not a bit interested in Sophia, nor was there any philos, any love in their heart at all. It was professionalism, it was cold, it was dry, it was all up here. And I felt not only that I'm not interested in that, I felt it was a profanation of something that is fundamentally sacred. I felt like shaking the dust off my feet.
So 3 weeks in, he goes to the head of the philosophy department, and he's like, I haven't touched any money. I'm quitting. I'm going to be a lumberjack in Oregon. Like, who does that? I just think that's such a badass move. And so he goes to Oregon, and his brother, he learns about this. His brother at this time was at Purdue University, and he notifies the physics department. He's like, my brother's a little crazy, but he's very smart and he's very gifted, so can you please give him a chance?
There are times in one's life when the hand of providence enters. And when that happens, you can recognize. She said, tell your brother, I want to see him here in my office Monday morning. He must start his duties as a teaching assistant in the department.
And just like that, the world lost a lumberjack, but gained a mathematical physicist.
Already at a young age, where he's at Cornell, like when he's doing his triple major, he's exposed to this little book, and it's called Gitanjali, and it's Hinduistic poetry. And he reads that little book, and he's basically set on fire.
He says, drunk with the joy of singing, I call you friend, who art my Lord. That struck a chord. I mean, I had never encountered anything like that. And it just touched me deeply.
So he's like, there's something very special about this. And throughout his academic career, he gets this incredible fascination for Indian culture, for the Vedic religion. And eventually, he takes a trip between his stretch at MIT and UCLA. He takes a trip of 7 months to India.
Smith ultimately chose to focus on mathematics, obtaining his doctorate from Columbia University. After a 1.5-year fellowship at MIT, he accepted a position on the mathematics faculty at UCLA beginning the next academic year. In the meantime, he took the opportunity to fulfill a dream.
I went to India and the Himalayan regions then for 7 months. And I can really say in retrospect, this was an absolutely decisive event in my life. At one point, I spent 7 months living amongst sadhus in remote places just to communicate with them as best I can and observe their life and try to form some idea as to what they have achieved. And I can tell you that this has revolutionized my life, because I realized that these advanced sadhus who actually had devoted their life to that practice were actually able to enter ontological planes that we in the West don't even know exist.
He's noticing that they're really not in the body. So he sees these people and they're basically in trance for 20 hours a day. They're really not there. And he's starting to see that the paradigm he was gifted in Western science was not according with what he was seeing. He's like, these things, they're not explicable through the eyes of the physicist. He starts to understand the world through a new paradigm, which he gets in India, but he also got it in Platonism. And this is what they call in Sanskrit the Tribhuvana.
All being comes from the aeviternal plane. So iconically, you have a circle with a center. The center represents the aeviternal plane. The intermediary is the interior, and then the corporeal is the actual circumference of that circle.
What we're seeing is basically a cosmic icon. This is a visual image representing the way the people in the Vedic tradition understand the world. And in the Platonist tradition, he sees it as the same. So in the middle, you have a center. This represents a realm that is without time and space. And according to him, all being originates from here. So all reality comes from here. This is the aeviternal plane, as he calls it. What you see between the cosmic icon and the outer line is what he calls the intermediary realm. This is with time, but not with space. And he asserts that the intermediary realm is basically what you go into when you dream. Because what happens when you dream, you still have the conception of time, but you don't have a conception of space. At least the space you experience is practically false. And then the outer circle is actually what we experience. So this is space and time, but importantly, it's also quality. So that means that you have green grass, you have beautiful song, you have the quality that makes the world so rich. And precisely why he says physics is wrong is because physics doesn't even take the outer level as reality. It takes something even below that. So that is only quantity.
The realization that nature is not, after all, a dull affair, soundless, scentless, colorless, merely the hurrying of material endlessly, meaninglessly. This alone restores to us in principle the perennial wonder of the world, from the song of birds and the murmur of trees to the silent call of things that enter not into the minds of men. While I was traveling in India, there was one question I had, and a question which intrigued me very much, and I posed it to practically all the great saints or sadhus that I met. And it was this: I wanted to know about that supreme state, by whatever name you want to call it. And I wanted to know whether anything of the human is left. Is there anything of this man that survives that ascent and actually is taken up into this supreme state? And the answer which I got invariably is no. There was something in this that I could not really accept. It intrigued me and I was not satisfied.
Wolfgang Smith seemed prepared to spend the rest of his years in his secluded home in the beautiful forests of Oregon, deeply influenced, but ultimately unsatisfied by the knowledge imparted to him in India. And that's where Thea comes in.
Something very momentous happened. A beautiful young woman came into the mathematics department to get her PhD in mathematics. And we became acquainted, and by the time she left after getting a doctorate and was about ready to begin a very fine career at the University of San Diego, I decided I would like to marry her. I proposed and she accepted, and thus starts a very brand new life. Thea was a deep, deep Catholic. She was deeply rooted in her Catholic faith. It was in her blood and in her bones. And when we were married, I had been raised as a Catholic, but I had drifted away and I was now in a different kind of spiritual world. And Thea never forced anything on me. Unbeknownst to myself, she, in company with a very wonderful Franciscan monk, Father Giovanni, they were praying daily that I would return to the faith. And so then it happened. I had been reading St. Augustine's commentary on the Gospel of St. John, the biography of St. Catherine of Siena. These two books converted me. So I returned to my Catholic faith. And incidentally, it soon became clear to me that now this nagging question, which I asked all over India and which was never answered to my satisfaction, now it was answered. Because Christianity is a religion of the incarnation. God became man so that man could become God.
He's basically saying that with the coming of Christ, the second option was initiated. And he also said that for Western man, it is very, very difficult, if not impossible, to walk the Vedic path. So he realized coming back to the West that this was not for him, but he did have something that he could take back with him. And it is a deeper understanding of this tradition and a deep reverence for it. So if you ask him if any religion is better than the other, the Vedic or the Christian, he says no, because they're different, but they're both from God.
And then when I was about 40 years old, I married a wonderful Catholic woman. And in a sense, she became my guru because not that she ever lectured, but by her mere presence, she reconnected me to Christianity.
My wife did the same for me.
Is that wonderful?
I grew up Christian and then I became an atheist from when I was 8 years old or so, because I remember asking my brother, who was a physicist at the time, how did the universe come about? And he said, it could have come from quantum fluctuations. That's how nothing comes from something, or something comes from nothing. And then I remember sitting and thinking, okay, Ben, that solves the last problem I had with the notion of God, namely, how can anything be here? So from that point forward, I became an atheist, and it wasn't until I met my wife and just her sweetness, her lovingness, her endearedness, I've never met someone that I felt like I can't hurt them. If I hurt them, I would feel so horrible.
I like very much what you're saying. It's wonderful. It took me a long time also to get to think like that. In a sense, my inspiration, and I can really say my strengths. It's a hard thing to explain. She was a powerful spirit, and I, as it were, leaned upon her. So she really is very much a part of this adventure, and I am very happy that my first book and my last are both dedicated to her. I've had a very productive time in recent weeks, and I feel it's now coming to an end.
What do you mean?
Well, I just had my 93rd birthday, and which I never expected. No one in my family has ever lived that long, and all things come to an end.
Well, hopefully not terribly soon. I would love to see you again in person.
Well, I leave it all in God's hands.
Thank you so much, Wolfgang. Thank you.
Well, I thank you, Kurt. I regard it as a great privilege to meet you, to spend a few days getting to know each other, and I wish you all that is good. I think you are apostolate, and that's the right word. It is an apostolate that you have. Your apostolate is a very noble, very important apostolate, because what the world needs today, almost more than anything else, is the kind of thing that you are attempting to bring about. For example, the understanding of our great traditions, the understanding of why we are really in deep trouble today. It takes a certain spiritual eye to see that. Your apostolate is so important. You are in the service of God, in the service of religion, and there's nothing greater than that. Nothing.
Thank you. I hope we can live up to 10% of that. Thank you.
Well, wonderful. I'm very happy about the questions that you raised. They were excellent questions, and that's a big part in getting a good answer. A big part in getting a good answer is to ask a good question, and that's not an easy thing. All the best to you, John.
You too.